PBS Utah presents the Governor's Monthly News Conference, an exchange between Utah reporters and Governor Spencer Cox.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is great to be with you again at our monthly news conference. I appreciate members of the media who are here with us. As you will notice, I am wearing a mask again. Not that I love masks, but I am recovering from COVID. I want to be very transparent that I am now past 7 days. I haven't had a fever since Sunday, and my symptoms are improving significantly. And so, wearing the mask to protect our reporters who are here in the room with us in case I am still contagious for any reason. I should also mention that COVID brain is real, and so I may not be quite as sharp today, and I hope you'll give me a little grace as we power through this news conference. Today's a very special day for our administration. It marks 500 days since Lieutenant Governor Henderson and I were sworn into office. In some ways, it feels like 5 days, and in other ways, it feels like 5,000 days. It's been a really interesting time to be governor of an incredible state. But more than anything, I'm honored to have been able to serve the people of Utah for this past year and a half, and I'm very proud of what our team has accomplished so far. A couple weeks after I took the oath of office, we released the One Utah Roadmap, a set of principles and goals that have guided our administration, and I'm pleased to report that we've hit nearly all of the milestones that we set. On day 500, Utah's economy is stronger than ever by just about any metric. We've had record low unemployment since December, strong GDP growth, strong job growth, and we're ranked the number one state for economic outlook and recovery. We've delivered on returning hard-earned money to Utah taxpayers, cutting $300 million in income taxes, Social Security taxes, and the new Earned Income Tax Credit. We've overhauled business incentives and licenses. We've pushed funding for at-risk students, optional all-day kindergarten, and teacher pay raises. We've launched an Adopt a School program, inviting the private sector to partner with and support our schools around the state. We've expanded programs for apprenticeships, entrepreneurship, and certification programs for workers, and we created the Return Utah program to help those re-entering the workforce. We've delivered more than 5 million vaccines in record time to protect Utahns against COVID-19, and we've created the One Utah Health Collaborative, an effort with hundreds of stakeholders working together to lower healthcare costs and improve health outcomes. As promised, we've created more opportunity for all Utahns, with more women serving in our cabinet and senior staff positions than ever before, and more diverse candidates recruited for state jobs, boards, commissions, and judicial appointments to better reflect our population. And we've combined several state departments to be more responsive and more efficient. Importantly, our efforts have not been focused solely on today. We've also mapped out a secure future with our Economic 2030 plan, our Coordinated Action Plan for Water, and our State Energy Plan. All of this in the midst of a global pandemic and a devastating drought. Certainly there is so much more to do. We certainly have to continue to tackle the high cost of housing, the ongoing drought, and wildfire danger in our state. We have to ensure our children are physically and mentally healthy. And we must help students who are experiencing learning gaps due to the pandemic. And we must work harder together to create a community of respect, especially when we disagree. But on day 500, I'm very proud of our track record of accountability and transparency, and I'm more committed than ever to finding solutions, building bridges, and creating One Utah. With that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Governor, the latest drought report suggests that more reservoirs may run dry this year. What is your administration going to do about it to ensure that people have water, you don't have a bad situation getting worse? Sure.
So the reservoirs that you're talking about are reservoirs that are used primarily for farmers and irrigation. So we've known, and they've known for a long time, that those reservoirs are at the tipping point and likely to run dry, and they will be we'll be working with them to mitigate those costs. Our Department of Agriculture has been working very closely with our farmers. In fact, we've already started to distribute and will continue with our significantly increased the money that was given to us from the legislature to help farmers who are working through integrating new technologies and that use much less water. And so that's a very robust program. We're excited about that. We've got tens of millions of dollars that are being allocated there, and that's going to make a huge difference. In fact, I think we have $100 million total that will be allocated over the course of the summer. We've got dozens of projects underway that have been proposed and that will move forward. So that's going to make a huge difference across the state. We'll continue to work with our water districts. Right now, it really is the short-term answers are all about conservation. I'm proud of the legislature. When we talk about what we've accomplished in these 500 days, honestly, I thought it would take 3 or 4 years, just knowing what I know about how these things work, to get the bills passed that we got last legislative session. The legislature deserves a ton of credit for that. It's important to note that those bills are just now going into effect, and so the effect of all the work that we've done over the past year we'll start to see now moving forward. But more than anything, as I've said before, we know we can do this. We know we can do it because we did it last year, and we're starting with that knowledge already, that as we move into the watering season, that people are already cutting back on their lawns. Farmers are cutting back significantly on irrigation when it comes to their crops, and that's going to help us get through this what could potentially be a very dry summer.
Governor, I saw on your Twitter, retweeted a Forbes article about what they call the international food crisis. Yeah. What do you think could be done better on a national level and here in Utah to help that, especially the grain situation in Ukraine and with baby formula, especially everywhere being, what you could call a crisis, at least for the next several weeks until we get ample supply of that? For sure. So this is something our administration has been talking about. We're very concerned about the food crisis that is coming. So I was pleased to see that it's starting to get more media attention. When you look globally, I believe Russia and Ukraine account for about 25% of the wheat production worldwide, and because of the conflict that's happening there, and even if the crops are being harvested and planted and harvested, the ability to export those because of blockades and mines in the water, it's just impossible to get that food out of there. Now that's not going to impact the United States as much as other countries, especially countries in Africa, where I believe that there are many countries that are about 50% dependent on wheat production there. Certainly, what that means is we need more wheat production. Not just in the United States, but in other places. China is a huge wheat exporter, but they've also had a bad crop, and so that's going to hurt prices across the globe. I've said for many years that I think it's a mistake that we use corn for gasoline, and that's a good way of me saying I'm never running for president. It's just completely foolish that we've been doing that. That the government requires us to do that. This isn't just economics working. This is government mandates. So I think that's a big mistake. And what we will see is I think we will see more farmers substituting wheat this year for other crops as prices continue to rise there. But it's important to point that out, that we are a global society, and when something happens in Europe, when something happens in China, it has impacts all over the globe, and it's going to have impacts here. At a time when inflation is already raging out of control, we're going to see food prices increase because that basic commodity is in short supply.
Governor, what do you see is the state's role in easing the baby formula shortage, and specifically, what's your role?
Yeah, well, this is where I wish I had a bigger role. We've met as a team. Our team met with USDA and the FDA earlier this week, a couple days ago, to talk about what we can do at the state level. And sadly, there's very little that we can do at the state level because we don't have any baby formula production facilities. The problems around baby formula production have nothing to do do with state government or at the state level. So the best that we can do is to reach out to our partners across the state, find out where there is formula and where there isn't formula, and try to move formula around to places where it doesn't exist right now. That's very difficult, but that's something that we're working on. So we've reached out to all of our retail partners. There's a collaboration happening there, trying to figure out who has it and who doesn't, and how we can get that to other places. The other piece of this is messaging, and our partners put out some messaging yesterday to parents. I have some of that with me, and since we're on the topic, and I know you've all covered it very well, I think it's important that I share some of those talking points that I think are so important. So again, I want to thank the mothers out there who are volunteering their time to help connect mothers that don't have formula and those in need. Just some advice from the experts. They're saying, please do not make your own formula, do not water down formula, and do not use expired formula. Those three things can be very dangerous for babies. We're also encouraging people to talk with their pediatricians about switching brands. This works for some babies, but not for others because of nutritional needs, so please talk to your doctor. One of the big problems with the formula crisis isn't just a lack of formula, but a lack of specific formulas that certain babies need. So we encourage people to look for formula in smaller stores, big box stores, and online. What we are seeing, unfortunately, is this situation is being exacerbated, as we saw with bottled water and toilet paper in the early days of the pandemic. Because people know it's harder to find, when they do find it, they're buying more of it than they need, and that's making it harder for other families. And so we would encourage people to please only buy what you need. We are being told that production is coming back online, and that in the next week or two, we should see an increase in supply in the stores. So if you can, again, please just buy what you need. And if you have extra, consider donating to a food bank or a formula exchange. We do expect the shortage to ease up in coming weeks, and we're certainly hopeful that will happen.
How is that program working thus far, trying to discern where there is a formula, where there are formula supplies, and where there's a shortage? Yeah,
so it's not a program per se. It's a group of people just talking together and saying, hey, you have it. Can we get this somewhere else? So even amongst stores themselves. So if chains have it in large supply in northern Utah, but the same stores don't have it in other places, can you move that there? So this is a discussion that just started a couple days ago, and we're working with our partners, hoping that they can help us get supplies where it's needed.
To go off Brian's question, I think the big argument is it's the United States of America. How did we get to this point?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that's where, again, this is a colossal failure of government, of different government agencies. It's a colossal failure of our federal government's trade barriers and tariffs policies that have been misguided for a long time, and now it's rearing its head in the worst of ways. This was a very foreseeable crisis, and sadly, again, shutting down a plant because of what were real concerns, for sure, but not having a plan in place to replace the problems that would cause is not only misguided, it's bordering on criminal, and I just can't believe we got to this place.
Governor, we do have a question from Chris Reed with the St. George News. Chris, go ahead with your question.
Go ahead, Chris.
Hey, Governor. Good to see you. I'm out in Ivins, actually, in a field covering a story. And it happens to be not too far away from where you were inaugurated almost 500 days ago. And one of the big things that you mentioned during your inauguration and even in the lead up to it was your commitment to rural areas of Utah and in the areas that aren't necessarily Salt Lake County and Salt Lake City. How have you lived up to that commitment, and what more can you do, would you say?
Yeah, thank you, Chris. It's great to see you outstanding in a field of your own. Sorry, that's the COVID talking. Look, we're really proud of what's happening in rural Utah. We have seen tremendous economic growth, and our administration is committed to that. I promised that we would work on moving jobs, state government jobs, to rural Utah, and I'm pleased to say that we've been able to do that now. We're closing in on 200 jobs that we've been able to move. That may not be seem like a huge number, but in small areas, every one of those jobs is a really big deal. We've also been working with the private sector to move more jobs into rural Utah, and I'm pleased to say that is happening as well. Had an opportunity to have a conversation with Steve Neeleman last night, a prominent businessman here in the state of Utah, and his business has been very successful in expanding jobs and taking that challenge, moving them, especially in Carbon County and Price, places where the economies have been shrinking over the past several years, and moving more even high-level jobs into those areas, and finding that the work being done there is every bit as good, if not better, than the work that they've seen in other locations. And so we're proud of those partnerships that are happening, and the increased jobs that are occurring all across the state. In every county, we're seeing increased employment, increased job numbers, and decreased unemployment. We also have made significant changes to our Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity around the rural programs. We used to have almost a dozen or more rural programs to try to incentivize job creation, bring jobs there, help people get better employed. It was so confusing that nobody knew how to do it, and it really wasn't making a difference. So what we've done is we've consolidated those programs, pared them back significantly, and increased significantly the ability of the Office of Economic Opportunity, or Go Utah, to incentivize jobs in rural places. We don't need to incentivize every job along the Wasatch Front anymore. When you have 2% unemployment, that doesn't make sense. But this does give us an opportunity for those businesses that are looking to expand in rural Utah in big ways, and we're very proud of that, and it is working. We have done more rural job deals in the past couple years than probably the past 10 years combined. So it's a really great program, and we're headed in a much better direction. Now, our commitment is that we will continue that progress. And I visit at least one rural county every month. I still have my office in southern Utah, and we're down there every month as well. And we're making connections with business leaders and education leaders and public officials in those rural counties, and with my rural advisor, my rural senior advisor, who is working every day on these issues as well. So we've kept our promises, and there's still more to come. Thank you, Chris.
Chris, go ahead with your follow-up.
As a very quick follow-up, one thing that's also being looked at by local communities, certainly in southern Utah, is curtailing permits, curtailing zoning until the drought situation has been, I guess, addressed, or until there's basically the water to supply these new developments. Are you in favor of such curtailing?
So what we did, one of the bills that we passed this year, Chris, was a requirement that as part of city planning, they have to include water resources. So I think that's important to note, in that hasn't always been the case. Now, some cities have done that in the past, but it's very important. We are certainly encouraging more building. To lower the price of housing, we need more building, but we have to do that responsibly, and we have to make sure that the water resources are available for the housing that is coming into that area. And so, yes, I think every community has a duty, a responsibility. Any good mayor, any good city council would always look at the water resources that they have available and the building permits that they're looking at, and make sure that they're not overextending in a way that would hurt everyone in that community. So on a temporary basis, as we work through these issues, yes, not only should they do it, not only do I support it, it's now the law that they have to do that.
Governor, do you think the Fed is on the right path with interest rates, and do you believe a recession can still be avoided? Yes, the Fed is on the right path. Sadly, they took too long to get there, and it's
been exacerbated by other federal policies that shouldn't have gotten us this far. And we've pushed back on some of the, what I believe, again, is reckless spending and unnecessary spending by the Biden administration that has added at least 2 or 3 points, and this is according to the Fed, to inflation. And so because of the misguided policies and other things, again, what's happening in China and the China policy, the zero COVID policy in China, has made inflation worse, which was a mistake. The war in Ukraine has definitely made inflation worse. The Biden administration's poor policies around energy development have made inflation worse. And so now the Fed has no choice but to increase rates. And the sad part of that is what they're doing is it's demand destruction. That's all it is. They want to make it harder for people to borrow money, to buy houses and other things, and that will help to curtail inflation. If you have less demand, that you can either increase supply or reduce demand, and so that's one thing they're trying to do is reduce demand. Can we avoid a recession? I certainly hope so. And any good economist would tell you, though, that that's very difficult to do. The tools that they have at their disposal are very blunt tools. And historically, they've never been able to quite get that right, where you increase it enough to decrease demand, but not to send us into a recession. And so I think it's very possible, with all of those other things that I just mentioned on the table, in addition to the significant increases in interest rates, that a recession is possible. The good news for the people of the state of Utah is that we've been planning for a recession. We budget for recessions. We have more rainy day funds now than we have ever had in the history of our state. We have more working day rainy day funds. These are working rainy day funds. These are funds that we are treating as one-time money, even though it would normally be ongoing, so that we could shift it in case there is a recession, to protect education especially. And so we have been paying down debt as a state in the good times, which I think is just smart policy. Very proud of the decisions that we've made together with the legislature to pay down significant amount of debts, and then to fund new buildings with cash instead of bonding for them, as we would have done in the past. And so we feel very good about our ability to weather a recession. We're also still the most diverse economy in the country, which means that we are immune to some of the inflationary pressures that or the recession pressures that would happen across the United States. All of that being said, we are still part of the U.S. economy, and when there's a recession in the United States, there's a recession in Utah. So I'm hopeful that the Fed can thread this needle, but it would be one of the first times they were ever able to thread this needle. 1
month ago, you said that you were discussing with legislative leaders plans by the state to try to reduce the burden of inflation. Yeah. After your comments here at this setting, legislative leaders put out a statement, acknowledged those talks were going on, but really were non-committal about what would happen. So are those talks dead? And if so, why? If they are still going on, what's the plan? Yeah, they're not dead. They're still going on. You're right that they've been non-committal, and so we continue to have those talks. We're trying to find anything where there's some agreement. What we don't want to do is exacerbate and make things worse. And so much of what we're seeing with kind of inflation response from governments across the country is just to put more money into the system, which doesn't decrease inflation. It makes inflation worse. And so we're really kind of focusing on 2 areas right now and trying to see if we can find some common ground. The first is one that I'm a big proponent of, and that is mass transit, making mass transit less expensive for people who have access to transit, making it free like we did in February. We saw the ridership results that happened there. That would give the most, and this is where my focus is. My focus is on the most vulnerable, those who are really struggling right now. Look, there are a lot of people in the state that like me, that don't like $4.30 gasoline, but it's not going to end our budgets. We can get by. There are a lot of people who just can't
do that. They then have to make a terrible decision, and those are the people I'm focused on. And so free ridership on transit would allow them an opportunity. Even if it takes them longer to get to work, at least it's an option. So they could do that. It would save them money. They could use that money for groceries and other things, and would not exacerbate inflation. It would be good for the environment too. So that's one area that we're really pushing on. There's been a tepid response to that, I would say, but they are discussing it amongst their members. The second area that we're focusing on is really on resources for those in need, and focusing on food pantries, building those up. We know that there is a strain that's happening with our food pantries as more and more people are relying on those resources, and that seems to be less controversial. There seems to be more support around that, and so we're right now, we've asked our team to look at resources that we have available, so we wouldn't have to potentially call them back into session to do that. Do we have the resources available within the budget currently where we can reallocate something to get more food, more necessities out to those food banks for people that are struggling?
Governor,
here, Veronica, okay.
Governor, how do you think that your administration has been dealing with immigration in these past 500 days, and also your thoughts regarding Title 42?
Yeah, thank you, Veronica. So we've been very clear on immigration from day one, and that is that we think there is support for two things, and it's crazy to me that this is one of the areas where there's support amongst both Republicans and Democrats, and yet the politicians don't seem to want to solve this because they get elected running on these issues, unfortunately. But that is that we should secure the border, that we should make illegal immigration more difficult, that the drug trade and the fentanyl that we're seeing coming across the borders is very damaging, and that there has to be more done there. And then secondly, that we fix legal immigration, that we make legal immigration easier. Again, broad support for both of those amongst Republicans and Democrats, and certainly I believe it's something that we can do. I did just take a trade mission to Mexico. We had a great opportunity down there. I know we're running out of time here shortly. What I would say is we had very productive talks with the Mexican government, and we think that there is a path forward, working together, increasing their economic opportunities, bringing jobs from China to Mexico, expanding our opportunities for our businesses here in Utah to expand into Mexico, which will help the job market there and significantly reduce the problems at the border.
So, Governor, do you support the CDC revoking Title 42?
I do not. Yeah, I think we need to wrap.
Yeah, that's all the time we have for the broadcast portion of our program. Thank you for watching the PBS Utah Governor's Monthly News Conference, and we'll see you back here next month. All right, go ahead, Katie.
Sorry same question.
Ask the question again. Just.
Do you support the CDC revoking Title 42?
I do not. I think that that's a mistake. And again, with the crush that we're seeing at the border right now, we're not prepared for that. The United States is not prepared for that. And so I think we need to keep that in place until we can fix these other problems, as I mentioned before.
Governor, the legislature's
I'm going to go to Emily. She's been waiting.
I'm glad you're feeling better, and thanks for wearing a mask. But we're seeing an increase in COVID cases nationally and internationally, and here in Utah. How is Utah responding to this recent spread?
Yeah, so we've met with our professionals here in the state, and they've been looking at the data across Utah as well as across the rest of the country. And you are right. We are certainly seeing a spike. I'm part of that spike. We've seen some other high-profile cases, the Speaker of the House, Congressman Curtis, and so we are seeing a rise. The positive news is that this surge is not seeing a significant surge in hospitalizations anywhere across the country, and we're not seeing that here in Utah as well. And so the position from our public health officials is we'll continue to monitor. We're encouraging people who are at risk to get their boosters, and especially if you are over the age of 50 or have an underlying health condition, you do qualify for a second booster, and we would encourage people who are at risk to get those. And they're recently approved, now ages 5 to 11 can get boosted as well, and so that's a new change since the last time we met, encouraging people to get those boosters. And then I would also encourage people, again, especially if you are at risk based on age or underlying health conditions, and you do get COVID, there are medications available right now. Some of those medications need to be taken within the first 5 days of this onset of symptoms. So make sure you go and get tested, know if you have it, and if you're worried at all, reach out to your doctor, and they will prescribe you some of these great antivirals that can really help people. So we're taking cautions. We're watching this very carefully, but nothing that's causing them great worry at this time.
Governor, your thoughts specifically about Summit County now at medium transition per the CDC and other counties possibly hitting that same threshold today?
Yeah, that's again very likely. Same answer, just that we know it's spreading across the country again. That we're going to have another spike. But the good news is that because of the immunity that we have, immunity based on vaccines, boosters, and natural immunity, it does not seem to be as deadly as past spikes from this virus. And
Governor, so the legislature's Water Development Commission has authorized a study to try to get water from the Pacific Ocean to the Great Salt Lake. What do you think about this idea?
Well, I've said, look, we should be looking broadly. I think we should be looking at all potential options when it comes to making sure that we're preserving the Great Salt Lake and working to overcome this drought that's not just here, but throughout the West. I think we should study any and all options. What I would say is I'm not an engineer. I'm not an expert. There are certainly differences in salinity between the ocean and the Great Salt Lake. It would also be the elevation. We're 4,000 feet above sea level. That would be a fairly lengthy and I'm sure incredibly expensive project. Not that we can't do it. We've done big things as a country before, and I think we should continue to do big things. But certainly that's a pipe dream of sorts, literally and figuratively. Sorry, the dad jokes are just coming today. That would, if something like that were to ever happen, we're talking many years into the future. So our focus is on what we can do now, and that is a real focus on conservation.
Governor, we do have a question from Sean Hemmersmeyer with the Spectrum down in southern Utah. He asks, today a flip blitz is happening across the state where over 100,000 square feet of non-functional grass is being torn up to save water. But some conservation advocates say Utah's approach to non-functional grass is too conservative. Do you think the state is moving too slowly around the removal of non-functional grass? And should Utah follow the example of places like Las Vegas, where bans on all non-functional grass have happened?
Well, thanks for the question, and we're really excited about that project that's happening. And those, I will say, Washington County alone is going to save about 4 million gallons of water annually just with this one project that they're working on. And so this is a huge paradigm shift for people in Utah. And while I agree that there's more we need to do and that there's more that we can do, I'm more excited about celebrating this shift that has happened. I mean, if you told me even a year ago that we would have this kind of buy-in around a program to eliminate non-essential grass, I would have been shocked that we had made it this far. If you had told me that we were able to save billions and billions of gallons of water by people reducing their usage over the past summer, I probably wouldn't have believed it. I probably wouldn't have believed that we'd passed 12 bills, conservation bills in the legislature this past year. And so I would say we're moving very rapidly, a lot more rapidly than I anticipated that we would move. And we'll continue to monitor how those programs are working. And success breeds success. When other cities and counties see what Washington City and Washington County are doing and how much they're saving, I think that's going to be a huge incentive for them to do the same thing.
Governor, can you give us an update on the taxpayer-funded security upgrades at your home in Fairview? Have those been finished?
They have been finished, yes.
Governor, when we were talking about recession, you said that the Biden administration has had some reckless spending. What are some examples of that, and would you blame them or partly blame them if a recession does come?
Well, sure. And again, I said that there's certainly some partial blame to go around. There are other things to blame. There's no question about that. I mentioned the China policy. The war with Ukraine has been awful when it comes to energy and now food, as we've talked about as well. There are several examples of this. I mean, the biggest was the last piece of the pandemic spending that was done, which was very necessary. The economy was already recovering in most states, and it was a huge number. And certainly, I mean, it was Senator Manchin who saved them from themselves from trillions more dollars that could have been put out there. So that's the type of spending. I want to be very clear on this, that the checks that were being sent out to people, and again, I got one of those checks. I certainly didn't need it. Stimulus checks, yeah, that were being sent out. There were people who did need that, very much so, but that's not how it was partitioned out. It was just sent out to everyone who qualified without any sort of application process whatsoever. And so we've seen what kind of I call it a kind of a cotton candy high that has had on our system, where it's just all this free money that's out there now, and being which significantly increased demand and significantly increased inflation, and the Fed is now admitting that has happened. But the other piece of that was the money that has been sent to states, and that money hasn't even started into the system yet. It will just now be coming in most states like Utah when we start in July. Now, we have made the decision to put that into infrastructure. And so we will be doing that, and it's important that we have an opportunity to invest in infrastructure for future generations. But every state now has huge surpluses. A lot of that is coming from that federal stimulus, and that will now just start to go into the system, which could apply even greater inflationary pressures on what we're already seeing.
Governor, we asked in our most recent poll about whether Utahns think political debates have become more or less civil in the United States, and a huge majority, 90%, said less civil. Your thoughts on that?
My thoughts are, I would love to talk to the 10% who think they're more civil. I can't imagine anybody with a pulse that thinks our civility is improving in this country. I've been very vocal about this. I think that there is a place for debate, and healthy debate is really good. In fact, healthy debate is fundamental to a robust democratic republic like ours. And yet, what we are seeing is not that. It is not healthy at all, and the name calling, the cheap shots, and the divisiveness for divisiveness sake, the othering, the use of fear and demagoguery to gain influence or power or get elected, I think is a sad commentary on where we are as a people, and I think it's very destructive and very dangerous. And we've seen some of the results of that, and I'm certainly worried about the future if something doesn't change there.
Governor, back to COVID for a minute.
Yeah.
A couple of questions related to your particular case.
Sure.
Did you take antivirals, number one? Number two, how are you feeling? And number three, what surprised you the most after getting COVID yourself?
So I did not take any antivirals. I met with a medical professional. I'm right on the border for the recommendation, only because I've gained about 10 pounds since I became governor. That put me just in the maybe you could, but you don't have to category right there. So in full transparency, because we are seeing an increase in cases, I wanted to make sure that I wasn't taking it and somebody else might need it. And so I did not take any antivirals. I'm feeling much better. Yeah, so I had very mild symptoms in the beginning. That was I tested positive Thursday morning, so a week ago. Friday I felt pretty good. Saturday started feeling a little worse. Sunday was significantly worse for me. That was my worst day by far. I only had a mild fever. I did have the worst sore throat I've ever had. It felt like a hot branding iron was stuck down my throat. Made it hard. That's the thing that surprised me the most, I think, was made it hard to eat, swallow, couldn't sleep because of the discomfort. And then it kind of moved, and the doctor said this is a fairly normal progression. Moved down into my chest with some coughing, but that's really been the extent of it. I feel much better today. Again, I haven't had a fever for several days. The cough has gone down. I don't have the sore throat anymore, and so that's all good news. No difficulty breathing. No difficulty breathing at all. I had an oximeter that monitors oxygen, and my oxygen never dropped. Never had any issues that way at all. With the terrible sore throat and the coughing kind of in the throat, sometimes it was hard. You'd almost feel like you were drowning just a little bit. Not that I was, but just because it made it hard to swallow. But never any problems with oxygen.
Would you encourage more people to wear masks while we're seeing this increased spread?
If you're worried about the transmission, it's a good idea to wear a tight-fitting N95 mask for sure. That option is always available to people. And if you're not vaccinated or you're not boosted or you're high risk and you're worried about it, I would. So, for example, I have two siblings I mentioned before who have cystic fibrosis that we're always worried about, and they would wear masks during flu season often anyway. And we had a family gathering a week ago, last Saturday, and my sister didn't have her mask on at first, and I encouraged her to put her mask on just in case, because I knew that things were, that the transmission was increasing. And sure enough, I tested positive less than a week later. So I was really glad that she had a mask on, and she tested, and she is not tested positive. So if you are concerned, I would encourage people to feel free to always wear a mask.
Governor, at this point, do you intend to seek any fireworks restrictions as a result of the increasing wildfire danger we're headed into?
That's a great question, Ben. We haven't had those conversations yet. Obviously, fireworks are not legal until later in the year. But I can assure you that if you're wondering what this year will look like, just look back to last year, and those conversations will happen just like they did last year as we get closer. We'll watch very carefully. We could have, the wettest June in the history of the state, and that would be amazing. I'm certainly hoping that's the case. The extended forecast is not for that. In fact, I saw the extended forecast today is showing likely drought basically for every state west of the Mississippi. So we'll be watching that very closely, but those conversations will be happening for sure with the Department of Natural Resources and the legislature, and then our fireworks manufacturers.
Governor, back to the question about civility. In your inauguration speech, you issued a call to action about civic charity. Do you think here in Utah we've made any progress on that, or has that polarization in this state only gotten worse?
I think people are starting to understand more. The exhausted majority, as others have referred to them, are starting to, I believe, speak out a little more about what they're seeing and that polarization and how dangerous it is. We've probably taken a few steps in the wrong direction here in our state, but not nearly at the rate of the rest of the country. I'm still incredibly hopeful here in Utah that most people really do want to work together, that most people do want to find common ground, that there are very loud and vocal voices out there that are on the extremes at both parties that get most of the attention. But I believe the exhausted majority is still far outweighing those voices. We just don't get heard as much, and so I'm still optimistic, but still deeply concerned.
Any specific examples of where we've taken steps backwards?
Well, I mean, I don't know. You could look at the Twitter responses this morning for me. I don't know. I haven't looked at them, but I'm sure that they're not great. You see it in social media. You see it in our dialogue. There was obviously one very big example during the legislative session where I felt it was a mistake. Others disagreed with me on that one for sure. But we also had so many other examples of things being done the right way, positive examples of people coming together, and that's where I would like to celebrate more. We had some incredible laws that were passed around reaching out to our minority populations and helping, even when it comes to curriculum and things like that have been very divisive, and yet we found a way to come together in a different way that didn't get nearly as much attention as the culture wars that are happening out there. And so while I think we have seen the culture wars, the battlefronts expanding here in the state of Utah, we've also seen an increased willingness willingness of people to come together to work on those very divisive issues and try to find some common ground.
Just to clarify, I'm assuming you're speaking about the transgender sports bill. Is that example?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You have described yourself as a pro-life governor. Are you looking with anticipation to the Supreme Court ruling and the trigger law taking effect in the state?
Yeah, I have. I've been very clear about that. I ran as a pro-life governor. I've believed my whole life. I mean, and especially when I went to law school, that Roe was wrongly decided, and so I'm hoping and anticipating that we will see that final decision coming out of the Supreme Court. That being said, also I believe that our focus really needs to turn to those who will be affected by that decision, making sure that we make it easier for families, women, partners to avoid unwanted pregnancies, that we're working to support parents and children, especially unwed mothers, that we're doing more on the adoption front and the foster parenting front, that we are giving every resource possible to women and babies who will again be impacted by this decision. And so I think it's important that as a state and especially as Republicans that we start focusing more on those issues.
And do you foresee that happening in the coming session? Will you propose that?
Yes.
If the Supreme Court rules the way that it appears that it's going to rule, will you support more help for women?
In fact, we've already started having those conversations just preliminarily, and I've floated out to leadership that I want to sit down and work on what a suite of bills could look like around supporting families and single moms especially, and see that we can't do significantly more. I don't know exactly what that's going to be yet. That's still in the formative process, but that's the direction you'll see me going.
Governor, the Utah Republican Party is really pushing for lawmakers to repeal SB 54, which gives candidates the option of gathering signatures to get on the ballot. Would you be in favor of getting rid of that?
I would not. No, we've had these fights over and over again now for, I don't know, 7 years, 8 years. I don't know exactly how long it's been. Feels like an eternity. And the legislature has shown over and over again that they're not willing to move on that, and neither am I. So I think that issue has been done and dealt with for a long time. And the citizens of Utah seem to like the system that we have now, the dual path to the ballot, and I think it's here to stay.
But just saying that if they were to pass a repeal, because there's going to be some turnover, if they were to pass a repeal, would you veto that?
Yeah, well, again, the hypotheticals, I don't know what that would look like exactly, so I would have to wait and see, but I don't support it.
Governor, this week, your counterpart in Idaho won a primary challenge against his more conservative lieutenant governor. What do you think that says about GOP politics in the Intermountain West right now?
Well, Governor Little is a good friend and an excellent governor, and I'm very proud that he won the nomination, the Republican nomination by a fairly large margin, a significant margin. And I would also just push back a little bit on the contention that he was running against somebody more conservative. I think that that term has been changed from what I believe conservative means. I believe that Governor Little is one of the most conservative governors in the country. I think he's an excellent conservative. He's a model conservative. He's the type of governor that we need and the type of governor that I aspire to be. I don't think his challenger was more conservative. She was more something, but not more conservative.
What additional water conservation measures are you thinking about? Obviously, the legislature did a lot this session, but we need more, it seems.
Well, I think it's important. We tend to do this, that we pass laws and then we don't even wait to see what effect those laws have before we're already on to the next thing. And so clearly we know we need more funding. I think that's an important piece of this. More funding on the Great Salt Lake. I talked about this, the speaker has talked about this, that the $40 million that we put aside was just the beginning point. And so that's where I think you'll see with all of these programs, what we've done is we've put into place vehicles to deliver water conservation. The rate at which we're able to deliver on that conservation will depend on the funding that is received. So, for example, we put into place the very first statewide program that will pay or incentivize or we can give grants to people to help remove their grass and replace it with water-wise landscaping. So we're very proud to be the first state to do that. Not Arizona, not Nevada, Utah is the first state to do that. Now, we put, I think, $5 million aside for that, and we're hoping that will all get used. In fact, we're hoping that there's much more demand than that, and so then we'll fund more so that we can do more of that. So that's the idea. Let's put all of these in place. Same thing with our farmers and the programs there to improve their irrigation systems. Put the programs in place. Go out and educate people on what's there, and then hopefully demand will exceed supply, and we'll get more money to do more next year.
What bills would you like to see advanced when it comes to drought, water issues, things like that?
I don't know that I have an answer in addition to what we've already seen, but certainly we're open to other bills and other opportunities out there. What I would say is we have to increase storage. That's the other piece of this. We've been mostly focused on the conservation piece, but we have to continue to look forward on the storage piece of this, and working with the federal government as well. I mean, I hear people all the time say that we should never build another dam. And to those people I say, if you live here, you better like dams, because that's how you get your drinking water. That's how 90% of the state gets their drinking water, is from our reservoir systems. And so we just with the growth that is happening in our state, internal growth alone, we're going to have to increase storage and just be smart like our predecessors were, who made it possible for us to live here.
How do you balance the state's desire for economic development with the reality that we are, in a very, very dry state?
Well, again, I don't think that they're mutually exclusive. We've always been in a dry state, and we've had very positive economic development. We are in a drought cycle right now. I don't anticipate that the drought cycle will last forever. I don't know if it will last 1 more year or 5 more years or 10 more years. And so we have to respond to conditions as they present themselves, and that's exactly what we're doing. So the way we respond is by innovating, and the market is doing that. I mean, it's incredible the water savings that can happen. Again, just mentioning agriculture as one, but this is happening throughout industry, and we've seen this in power consumption. We've seen it in other avenues as well. But the ability to do more with less is going to be important for all of us moving forward. And some of the innovation, again, that we're seeing in the agriculture space, not just with irrigation systems, but with food production as well. Food production that takes place inside with significantly less. I mean, we're talking sometimes 90% less water for the same output is remarkable. So that's how we balance it. We encourage innovation. We incentivize innovation if we need to, and then we adopt innovation. And that's what we're doing through this ag program. Is we are helping farmers to take the innovation that's already out there on the market and replace their outdated and antiquated systems, which will save, again, billions of gallons of water and still allow us to have food to eat.
couple of other questions, follow-ups related to statements you've made in this news conference thus far. In terms of,
I don't remember any of those statements, Brian. So you're going to have to remind me of all of them. I have no idea what I've said.
We'll try to make allowances.
I'm sure you'll help me.
I have live shots
okay,
like
good,
that.
Good,
where
good.
I don't
You've got the receipts.
5 minutes ago. Question one related to inflation. Do you expect there will be something before the end of the summer at the state level to ease the burden of inflation?
I do.
You do. Okay. And so legislative leaders, and those talks are progressing. You see the opportunity for success there.
I do.
Related to the suite of bills, as you describe them, to help women and couples and others who are dealing with pregnancy, what does that look like?
Well, I don't know yet. All I can say is, again, broad contours that anything that helps families, that supports families to prevent unwanted pregnancies and then help when those pregnancies occur, that those are the discussions that we should be having. And they haven't taken place yet. We don't have a Supreme Court decision yet. Yeah.
Okay. But those are discussions that are already happening?
So a 5-minute phone call that, hey, we need to sit down and have these discussions, and we will. Yep, that's what we're talking about. Okay, please.
One more quick question. The Inland Port Authority has a new board, essentially, like complete turnover, and they're more focused on business and industry. The authority has been up and running for a couple of years now. What do you want to see from the Port Authority in the next year?
So in the next year, this turnover that you mentioned was really critical, and it's a coming together. It was, as I mentioned before, some of the things that didn't get as much attention as the more controversial issues. This is one of those where what was a controversial issue now is much less controversial, as the mayor and city council of Salt Lake were able to come together with legislative leadership and myself and really work to improve the communication there, improve the relationship, and then improve what's going to happen out here. So what we're focusing on, and this couldn't be more timely. What I want to see them do is really increase the ability for our manufacturers to export goods and also import goods for consumers here in the state of Utah in a way that helps to strengthen supply lines and to reduce some of the red tape that is causing some of the inflationary issues that we have out there and some of the big supply chain issues. During my time in Mexico, I didn't really get a chance to expand on this. We had phenomenal meetings both at the federal government level as well as at the state level with the governor of Jalisco and their economic advisors. We met with businesses there. I can't tell you how excited I am about trade with Mexico. North America, the time is right with everything that we're seeing from a geopolitical sense across the world. The time is right for North America to really come together in powerful ways. This will not affect jobs in the United States. In fact, it will increase jobs in the United States. What we're doing, and what every business I talk to in Utah that is right now manufacturing in China, every one of them tells me the same thing. They want to get out of China, and they want to get back to the United States or Mexico. That's their goal, and that will help them with their supply chains. That will help them with their with the politics of the situation. It will help their bottom line. And what it's going to do is it's going to significantly increase the standard of living in Mexico. Mexico has I believe, a generational opportunity right now to take advantage of what's happening in the rest of the world. And Utah is situated importantly as a crossroads. The main freeways that run from Mexico to Canada come right through Utah. We have rail lines that come here as well, and so by having an inland port here, we have the opportunity to process those goods in ways that we've never done before. So that's going to be huge. It's going to be huge for consumers here in the state. It's going to be huge for workers here in the state, and it's going to be good for Mexico. It's going to be good for the border. All of these issues that we have, it's just a win all the way around. And I want them to do that in the most environmentally friendly way possible, and that's their goal. That's part of their mandate, and they're excited about that. We're looking constantly at new technologies out there. There's a big solar project that's happening out there. There are hydrogen possibilities out there as well, and so it's a very exciting time, I think, to be involved with the inland port here in Utah.
All right, that's all the time we have. Thank you, Governor.
Hey, thanks, everyone.